in its bombing of peaceful nuclear facilities early Sunday morning.
No.
So as we continue to report on this breaking news, Iran's response to the U.S. targeting its military bases both in Qatar and Iraq, and many others are on high alert. Let's now be joined. Let's now be welcome to our correspondent, our special envoy in the region, Yunus Soner, to have more details of what is happening right now in the Middle East and all the possible repercussions that these actions can possibly have. Welcome, Yunus. Thank you for joining us. What can you tell us?
Hello, good afternoon, Luis. Good afternoon to our audience. The latest news we got from the Middle East is that the air defense, the U.S. air defense, has been activated in 2 additional military bases. These are air bases, and they are not located in Qatar. They are located in Iraq. These are the bases, Al-Hariri and Al-Assad air bases. One of them is central Iraq. The other one is in the north of Iraq, close to the city of Arbil. And there had been reports already from that region in the recent days that some drones have appeared close to that air base. So these air bases, these 2 U.S. air bases, are, according to yet unconfirmed news, also under attack. Meanwhile, Bahrain has also closed its airspace. Sirens are sounding also in Bahrain. So this is a very tense situation in the Middle East. But right now, I'm reporting you from a different front line. And if you take a careful look behind me, you will see interesting facts. Right now, I'm in the capital city of Brussels. This is the capital of Belgium. And here is a protest against the NATO summit that is to be held tomorrow in Den Haag, in neighboring Netherlands. And behind me are hundreds of people who came out of the peace conference and who are right now sitting in front of the exchange, of the Brussels exchange. The exchange, the values are traded, and they are holding a number of Palestinian flags. They are holding a Lebanese flag, and right in the middle, you see they are holding an Iranian flag. So they are protesting against what is expected to happen tomorrow on the NATO summit in Den Haag, which is the political decision to increase military spending to 5% of each country's GDP, which is an incredible amount of money for all NATO countries, and also expected to be provided as an example. The U.S. Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, already made a statement regarding NATO allies in East Asia, like Japan, South Korea, that they should follow the Europeans' example and also increase their defense spending to 5%. So this is a huge politics of militarization that is to be decided upon tomorrow in Den Haag, in the NATO summit of heads of state. And people here in Brussels, as well as they did last week in Den Haag and in Amsterdam, are protesting against this militarization of European transatlantic politics, and they are doing so under the Palestinian flag. I would like my camera colleague to show again that this is an anti-NATO protest. These are people who are protesting against militarization policies of Western countries, and their main flag to do so is the Palestinian flag, which is joined also by the Lebanese and the Iranian flag. So this flag of Palestine has become a symbol of anti-imperialism, anti-militarism, militarization, and a lot of politicians I talked today here in Belgium, politicians from different European countries, they not only rejected US attacks on Iran, they not only rejected Israeli attacks on Iran or Zionism, they also rejected Europe's compliance with it. They said the US and Israeli attack on Iran is also an attack on multipolarity and they rejected, and they said Europe could take its place in the emerging global multipolar world order, establishing good relations with Russia, establishing good relations with Iran, and rejecting militarization of its foreign policy by the United States.
Yunus, going back to Iran's legitimate response against U.S. targets following the bombing by the U.S. of peaceful nuclear facilities, where do you think this is going? Because as of now, we saw a unanimous response from the regional bloc condemning the Israeli and U.S. attacks on Iran. Do you think that Iran's actions right now of targeting U.S. bases within Iraq and within Qatar might create now some divisions between these countries with Iran?
To a certain degree, these divisions had already existed. All the countries, all the Middle Eastern countries, criticized the U.S. attack on Iran, but not all of them condemned the attack. And it is a matter of fact that the United States has approximately 50,000 soldiers in all over the Middle East, based in various Arab countries too. So the relations between Iran and the Arab countries were always a little bit ambiguous between cooperation, but also a distance and conflict. What is now in front of these Arab countries is the following question, which they have been avoiding to a certain degree for the last, I don't know, decades. Is it possible to have a Middle East in peace and stability, but meanwhile having U.S. military bases in your own country? Is it possible to maintain national sovereignty, to maintain good relations with your neighbors, maintain advanced normalization with the Islamic Republic of Iran, like as did Saudi Arabia with Chinese mediation, while maintaining U.S. military bases in your own country? So this is the question that they are facing. And I think there will be different voices within these countries. Some will say that a moment has come to change the traditional course of line, which we saw recently also in the Middle Eastern trip of U.S. President Donald Trump, where Middle Eastern countries promised to invest in the United States. They basically gifted him money, billions of dollars, just to appease him. This is one line, and the other line is getting more and more independent from the United States and approaching itself to Eurasian powers, not only Iran, but also to China. And here, I think the mediation of relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran by the Chinese government has been very important. And there are steps and indications that there might be some voices heard within these Arab countries which now call for a change of sides or for a more decided rapprochement towards Asian forces. And here is an important fact. Remember that in the U.S. attack that was taken place on Iran, the U.S. military planes that were used did not depart from Arab bases. I do not say this to hide away an Arab role in it, but I do emphasize this because Arab countries previously had stated that they did not want to become part of this conflict, and that might be a reason why they did not allow U.S. planes to depart from these military bases. That's still notwithstanding, this decision is in front of them, and there will be different voices heard among them in the next days, debating the future of the Middle East and debating the future of the Arab Islamic world. An important indication, is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation that has convened recently in Istanbul, and that, has condemned U.S. attacks on Iran and called for de-escalation. So that is a little diplomatic move towards Tehran on the side of the Arab states.
We saw recently demonstrations in Turkey where people call for military bases, U.S. military bases in Turkey to be closed. Do you feel that this is a sentiment that is going to be repeated across the region as these movements gain more momentum for U.S. military bases to be closed in all these countries as they see them as a source of threat to the regional stability?
Of course, Turkey itself has a number of conflicts with the United States, not only in the context of the U.S. attack on Iran, but also in the Eastern Mediterranean in terms of energy, in U.S. support to certain groups operating in Syria, in U.S. provocations against Turkish-Russian relations, and so on and so on and so on. So in Turkey, there is a profound sentiment of anti-Americanism, being against these military bases, but not only that, but generally against the cooperation with the United States government. So these protests might emerge, and definitely the Turkish public opinion takes an anti-American stance. The Turkish government has a more diplomatic approach. It tries to mediate between Iran and the United States. It tries to de-escalate. It tries to pursue the weapon of diplomacy, trying to establish communication between Tehran and Washington. But this might be also a dead end, given the U.S. recently and given the Iranian response. Right now, for the Turkish government, it's also more a situation where the channels of diplomacy seems to be closed, and more the channels of protest and clear stance seems to be needed.
Going back to the conflict just earlier today, President of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, called for a global summit for peace, calling for all heads of states to participate, to be able to chart a path towards going back to peace and to ensure multilateralism. Is there a way that this can happen right now, or where do you think the conflict is going right now following the Iranian attack on U.S. bases in its response? Because now we can expect maybe the U.S. and Israel to also escalate their attacks. Is there a moment that we can get there, or do you think we are in a slippery slope and it's all going to go out of control very quickly before anything can be done about it?
First of all, I don't think nothing is out of control. We have here in the Middle East rational actors. The Iranian government is acting rationally. It is a state of great tradition. The Iranian state goes back 2,000 years in its existence, though its forms of governance might have changed. So this is not an irrational, emotional behavior that Iran displays. It's well calculated, based on deliberations among the government as well as with the supreme leader. So this is a well thought through position that Iran has taken. As for peace efforts, well, we have the position of the U.S. President Donald Trump, who has demanded for submission. So I have my doubts whether this moment peace can be achieved without a clear and decided response from Middle Eastern countries against U.S. and Israeli provocations against today Iran, yesterday Syria, tomorrow who knows which Middle Eastern country will be the target. Already Russia has been, and we know that there is a militarization mounting up against China. So peace is a very valuable effort, and the peace summit will be welcomed by the countries of the region. I'm sure of that. But also there are a lot of forces, political forces here, that before attending a peace conference, they demanded a response, a clear response from Iran, that no U.S. element in the region is untouchable, that the U.S. military bases here are not untouchable, and this has been provided by the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I think this is the way that might lead to a peace. This is my judgment. This is a commentary, of course, but I think that is the path. Peace negotiation on equal grounds. The other would have been submission demanded by Washington.
And of course, this is also going to impact the ongoing genocide in Gaza by Israel, because if a peace is to be reached, one of the main causes, one of the root causes, is the non-existence of a Palestinian state, where the Palestinians have the right, of course, to be able to have a sovereign state. How do you see these relations going in the ongoing situation?
Exactly. That's a good example for that. I spoke today to a Palestinian responsible here. She's the coordinator of the Hague Group, which unites 8 different countries who are coordinating their efforts against the policies of genocide. Colombia and Cuba are among these 8 countries. And she told me that a ceasefire is not peace. There is a lot of demand for ceasefire, and ceasefire is always a good thing because it is a calm for some days. But peace is something else, she said. Peace is a ceasefire that includes justice, that includes a fundamental solution of the conflict, which in that case would be the establishment of a Palestinian state. So that's a good indication how the word peace needs to have a content and needs to have a response from those countries that have been oppressed, that have been attacked. And I can assure you that from the Palestinians I spoke with here on this event behind me, they are extremely happy about the Iranian flag, about the Iranian response, about the Iranian response against US military bases, because this is how they see to establish a Palestinian state at the end. They tried with diplomacy. The history of Palestinian struggle is full of efforts of diplomacy, ceasefires, but at the end, what establishes state is the power is force, and they feel more powerful, more forceful today than they felt last week because of the Islamic Republic of Iran's response, not only to Israeli aggression, but also to the US attacks occurred on its soil.
Yunus, the axis of resistance suffered a strong blow, we can say this, after the government in Syria fell, after the government of Bashar al-Assad fell. But do you believe that these actions that Iran is carrying out right now gives moral strength to the axis of resistance to come more united than they already are to face the Zionist entity and the US support of this Zionist entity?
Definitely. I received already reports that Hamas Qassam brigades launched attacks on Israeli occupation forces. I could not yet confirm these, so they are unconfirmed, but it is very, very clear that Iran's response has given them moral, has given them strength, and also has pushed into a corner US forces. The United States is the main ally of Israel in the region. So the morale of Hamas members, of Hezbollah members, of members of the Islamic Jihad today is much stronger than it was last week when Israel was bombing Iran, when the United States was assisting secretly, and now they gain more strength. And this is visible. As I said, we are here in the capital city of a European country. This is Belgium. This is the Belgium exchange house. This is where the bolsa, as we say in Spanish, and in the middle of it, you see an Iranian flag. So this is also a symbol of confidence, because this is not a very common thing to happen here. And I'm sure that the Palestinian resistance has gained a lot of morale, a lot of strength, and is watching closely all the attacks occurring onto the US military bases in West Asia.
Thank you, Yunus, for all this information and for the broad analysis of the current situation, what is happening right now in the Middle East. Well, we're listening to our special envoy, Yunus Soner, as he reported right now he's in Belgium ahead of this NATO summit is bound to be held on Tuesday, tomorrow, where NATO members are expected to increase their military spending. This is something that was denounced by Russian President Vladimir Putin earlier today as well, that denounced the plans that the NATO alliance had to increase its spending and to trigger an arms race in the world, bringing more instability and more insecurity to the peoples of the world across all regions. We continue to inform for all our viewers that are just turning in. We continue to report what is happening right now as breaking news, that Iran launched Operation Herald of Truth, an operation that comes in response to the U.S. bombings of three nuclear facilities in the Persian nation.
No! يلا لا 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 وين؟ انزل 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 كله كله ينزل كله ينزل كله يجري.
Targets that were hit was the U.S. military base in Qatar, Al Udeid, one of the main bases, a stronghold of the Air Force, a main asset of the U.S. Army in Western Asia. We're seeing there on the map the exact location of the base, which is far from any urban areas or residential areas of Qataris. Over 30 kilometers far from the Qatari capital, from Doha. So that's the image we're seeing right now, is the map of where the main target of the Operation Herald of Truth was launched. This U.S. base in Qatari soil, which named Al Udeid, which is one of the most important military assets of the U.S. Army in West Asia, and serves as the headquarters of the U.S. Air Force Command, from where most of the air operations carried out by the U.S. against different countries in the region are planned. And this is all part, as we were repeating this breaking news, of the ongoing response, Iranian response to aggressions carried out by Israel and the U.S. So today, the authorities confirmed the launching of this Operation Herald of Truth, a joint operation between the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Iranian Army, which targeted a base, one of the largest and most important base in Qatar, and also a base in Iraq, while alarms continue to sound across different U.S. bases in Iraq and Qatar, but also in Bahrain and Kuwait. Where we can also announce that there are reports of successful hits in the U.S. airbase in Qatar, Al Udeid, as alarms continue to sound, as we were saying, across all these different U.S. as they prepare for a possible attacks coming from Iran against these U.S. bases, which, as we repeat, are in response to the U.S. bombing of peaceful nuclear facilities early Sunday, a bombing that was executed directly by the U.S. using B-2 stealth bombers. Now, the response, as the Iranian authorities have said, they will not let any aggression against its territorial sovereignty to go unanswered. So the response, they say, is proportional to the attack that the U.S. carried out. Therefore, they announced that they used the same amount of missiles that were the same number of missiles that of bombs that were used by the U.S. in the bombing of the 3 peaceful nuclear facilities in Persian territory. As all this is happening as well, while in Iran, different areas have activated as well their air defense to face any possible aggression that comes from Israel or the U.S. So we continue to update on the ongoing scenario of what is happening right now in the Middle East, as Iran launched its legitimate response to U.S. targets after the U.S. bombed the 3 peaceful nuclear facilities in the Persian nation. Iran had warned that following the criminal and illegal actions of the U.S. military as they attacked the nuclear facilities, illegal because no country has the right to attack another country, and criminal because the targeted objective were nuclear facilities, which goes against all international laws, conventions, UN Charter, and also against the NPT's treaties, because of the risk an attack on a nuclear facility poses of leaking radioactive materials, and which could lead to massive civilian casualties, massive civilian impact, not only for the people but also for the land itself, as it will be contaminated with all these radioactive materials. So in a telephone conversation that was recently held between the Iranian defense minister and his Russian counterpart, we were reporting that they held a telephone conversation where Iran said that Tehran and Moscow can work together to preserve, to secure defense, to secure regional stability and regional security. In this conversation as well, the Iranian side said that its decision is to punish all aggressions that are carried out against the Iranian nation, and that they will never accept an imposed peace, which is what the U.S. side has been calling for, the surrender, as our special envoy was saying just minutes ago, the unconditional submission of Iran to Israel and the United States, which is something that Iran has said will never accept, and leaving it very clearly that the source of all the issues, of all instability in the region, goes back to the U.S. with its military presence across different countries and its actions to intervene in the countries of the region. For his part, the Russian defense minister said that the attack on the Iranian territory on the nuclear issue was nothing but a pretext, and what the real objective of these attacks were and are to weaken the Islamic Republic of Iran and to spread chaos in the region, because the U.S. needs an unstable Middle East. So the defense minister pledged that Russia will support Iran. Continue to provide what is currently happening. Launch operation Hell of Victory in response to U.S. aggressions. In response to U.S. aggressions against free nuclear people facilities around Sunday morning, we have information of several missiles striking the U.S. airbase, although currently no reports of any casualties. This base in particular houses one of the largest U.S. base in the region and houses 10,000 military personnel of the U.S. military. And in total in the region there are over 50,000 military personnel deployed right now in the region. And following the U.S. attack on Iran, direct attack on Iran using B-2 stealth bombers, Iran said that all U.S. military assets in the region are currently legitimate targets, as they participated directly in operations alongside the Israeli regime against the Persian nation. They had already warned this before the U.S. attack took place, that they would consider all U.S. in the region as legitimate targets if the U.S. intervened directly in the, which it did on early bombing 3 nuclear facilities, something that is prohibited by international law, by the UN Charter, and by the NPTs, the NPT regime, putting in evidence the complete disregard of the US and its allies, which have been quick to condemn the action. for international laws and treaties. In the context, we have seen rising support for Iran as it continues to exercise its legitimate right to self-defense, following Israeli and U.S. aggressions. Now, in this context, we must also not forget what is right now happening in Gaza, Palestine. Right now, we're getting information that Israeli warplanes are bombing Gaza, bomb Gaza as they have done for over 2 years, leaving over 350 people killed, wounded. Latest bombings of refugee camps and 8 sent down. So in the last 24 hours, Israel has killed over 350 people in Gaza as they continue in their genocide of the Palestinian people. As we reported, the defense ministers of Russia and Iran held a telephone conversation where the Iranian side explained the reasons for their actions, and they will continue to defend sovereignty. Russia's minister, for his part, said that attacking nuclear facilities in Iran was just that the U.S. regime. The real objective is to weaken Iran, and that attacks on Iranian territory seek to sow chaos. In this context, the defense minister after the event and will support the Islamic Republic of Iran. For his part, now we're seeing some reactions in Iraq's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issue reaffirming that the regional crisis, can only be solved through dialogue and continue to monitor the worrying and dangerous escalations that is happening in the region following the ongoing Israeli aggressions on Iran and Iran's legitimate response to said aggressions. As Iran has said, no one will impose peace on Iran. They will continue to defend its national sovereignty and its independence, and they will not leave any aggression on the Persian nation unanswered. They will provide a corresponding response, a proportional response to all the aggressions that they receive. Something that is being evidenced today as Iran moved forward with Herald of Victory operations that it launched against U.S. military targets, following, as we were reporting, as we have been saying, the U.S. bombing using B-2 stealth bombers on nuclear facilities. Now, in this context, the Iranian Health Ministry just provided updates on the casualties of Iran since the onset of the Israeli aggressions on June 13th, and provide an update on how many women have died, because as Iran has denounced, Israel is not targeting only military targets, military objective. They are also bombing civilian areas, rural urban areas, residential areas, where many of the casualties have been civilians and not military. And in this context, Iran's health ministry reported 44 women killed since June 13th and 163 have been wounded since the onset of the Israeli aggression. This is only the amount of women killed, with several more being children and the rest being men. But most of the casualties so far in Iran in Israeli aggressions are reported to be civilian. We're also getting confirmation that we already reported that Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Iraq closed their airspaces, but also as Egypt and Turkey did, Oman has also suspended flights towards the region. So 5 countries have closed their airspaces, and I repeat them: the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Iraq have closed their airspace, and Egypt, Turkey, and now Oman have canceled all flights that were scheduled to travel to the region until further notice, until the situation stabilizes. We continue to have more information of a telephone conversation that was held between the defense minister of Iran and his Russian counterpart, saying that during the conversation we're getting reported that the Iranian defense minister, Amir Nasir-Zadeh, and the Russian defense minister, in this conversation, Russia expressed its condolences for the death of high military command and Iranian citizens, and declared that, as we were saying, that the attack on Iranian soil on the pretext of the nuclear issue is just that, a pretext, an excuse, that the real objective is to weaken the Islamic Republic of Iran and to sow chaos in the entire region, as Russia continues to monitor the situation and will support Iran. And the Iranian defense minister, Amir Nasir-Zadeh, after welcoming Russia for its support, affirmed that Iran is not only fighting against the Zionist regime, but against the United States and other countries that support that regime, the Israeli regime. And Iran's decision is to punish all the aggressors that want to harm Iran, and that they will not accept and impose peace, describing the US as the source of all problems and instability in the region, reaffirming that Tehran and Moscow can work together to achieve true peace. Now we're seeing images of downtown Tehran, where people have come out to celebrate what they describe as a successful Hero of Victory operation after they targeted one of the most, if not the most important US airbase in the region, specifically in Qatar, the Al-Udeid base, which was hit by several Iranian missiles in the context of this Operation Hero of Victory, following the US bombings of 3 peaceful nuclear facilities in the Persian nations. These brief images taken in downtown Tehran a few moments ago, as citizens came out to celebrate the country's response to the U.S. aggressions and to the Israeli aggressions sponsored by the U.S. This is a show of support for the operations being carried out by the Iranian military authorities against the aggressions of Israel and the U.S., showing also the unity that exists right now between Iranian authorities and its people in the fight to preserve its sovereignty and national integrity. Now, in this context, we have seen several reactions as have also begun to come in from different countries of the regions, from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, from different regional actors have come out and in this context and have condemned the Iranian attack in Qatar because it's attack because of the attacks on Qatari soil, even though it's directed at the U.S. military bases. So different countries in the region, as we were saying, Saudi Arabia, Qatar itself, have condemned the operation, even though Iran defend the operations as its legitimate right to defense, following the U.S. bombing of the U.S. nuclear facilities. And as all this is happening, we are receiving also information right now that the Iranian Parliament's Committee of National Security is voting on a proposal that calls on the government to suspend any cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. This is something that has been talked about for several days now, as Iran, who is an IAEA member and that allows IAEA inspectors to go to its nuclear facilities, that is a signatory of the NPTs that complies with all these international agreements. This situation has proven that all these international organizations and treaties have no validity at all, because we are being witness to the constant violations of these treaties, and we are being witness this since the first day of June 13th and before. But in this case, what began in June 13th with the attack, that first attack of Israel against Iran, which targeted nuclear scientists and targeted nuclear facilities, going against all these international treaties to which Iran is part. And what is even more insulting, we can say, is that the one committing these attacks under the alleged pretext that Iran is making a nuclear weapon is a country that has a covert nuclear program. It's a country that is not part of does not allow IAEA inspectors to visit its country. It's a country that is not a signatory of the NPTs, and is the country that is actually committing the bombing of nuclear facilities. That is why the Iranian Parliament, the Committee of the Iranian Parliament's National Security, is working towards this action, because the IAEA and the NPTs have proven completely unimportant in this context, that they are not able to implement, to carry out their objectives. We're also getting information that Turkey that Turkey stands in support of Iran and rejects any Israeli aggression and defends Iran's sovereignty. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan affirmed that they reject any attack on Iran's sovereignty and highlighted the diplomatic efforts to prevent the conflict from escalating even more. So this all happens it's not something that came out from today. This is all coming from following the Zionist regime's aggressions on very early Friday morning on June 13th, 2025, with attacks that were directed against civilians and military leaders and nuclear scientists. If we go and look at the casualties of that first attacks, they were mainly all civilians and the nuclear scientists and some high positions in the military echelon of the Persian nation. That is why we see today Iran fulfilling his promise to respond to any aggressions, to all aggressions that are committed against the nation. We saw previously images of downtown Tehran celebrating the Iranian response against U.S. aggressions, but now we are also getting information that in the south of Iran, in Bandar Abbas, people have also gone to the streets to celebrate the response, the legitimate response of Iran against U.S. military assets, in this case in particular against the U.S. airbase Al Udeid, main base of U.S. military in the region, the largest and from where most of air operations are planned. In this context as well, the foreign ministers of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain and Jordan have issued a statement and have called for a ceasefire. They urged for a ceasefire and to quickly find political solutions to the ongoing crisis, to the ongoing aggressions. The foreign minister of Jordan as well, besides calling for the immediate de-escalation, in its statements, the foreign minister of Jordan also affirmed its full solidarity with the Kingdom of Qatar in the face of security and stability threats, and expressed its support to any measure that Qatar takes to protect its security, sovereignty and the protection of its citizens. Now we have seen where this operation of victory of Iran against U.S. targets in the region have taken place. Let's now go over different targets that have been struck by the military operation True Promise 3, which is the one targeted to the against Israel following as well its aggressions. Now, True Promise 3 has hit the Hakiria base in Israel, which is an important military base, is the headquarters of the Israeli army. It also hit Hadra power plant, one of the largest power plants in Israel, north of Tel Aviv. And also the centers of Halfa power plant, which is the energy and electricity in northern Israel. Haifa, which is also one of the main cities that have been targeted of Israel, the oil refinery has been hit, the main energy and fuel factor in northern Israel, especially the aviation and transportation industries. The Nevatim airbase has also been targeted in the ongoing True Promise 3 operation, which is the airbase where the F-35s are based in southern Israel. You must recall also Iranian air defenses have so far brought down 3 F-35s fighter jets, which is the first time that it happens, as is the first time that F-35s are are deployed in a combat zone that is truly equal. We can say in a way that it's the first time that these planes have faced a strong air defense. Of the airbase has also been targeted, which is the home to the Command and Control Center and Electronic Warfare Center, as well as the Tel Nof Air Base, which is a military and strategic military base, and the Army headquarters in northern Israel, which is the Galilee Air Base. Haifa port infrastructure, all related to the oil terminals, have also been targeted and have been successfully hit, as well as the Weizmann Science Center, which is one of Israel's most important scientific and research infrastructure, is also described as the cradle of Israel's nuclear program, which, as we say, is a covert nuclear program because they do not allow the inspectors of the IAEA to go there and carry out their work as other nations do. Israel is the only nuclear nation that does not allow IAEA inspectors, and also is not signatory of the non-proliferation treaties. Tel Nof Air Base, which is an Israeli strategic base that was also, as we were saying, was targeted. Israeli Ministry of War, which is part of the regime Key's military command, was also struck, as well as Israel Nuclear Research Center in Tel Aviv, and different other companies and headquarters which are important for the backbone of the Israeli military. So we continue to provide the latest news coming from the Middle East. Iran launched its retaliatory response following the U.S. bombings of 3 peaceful nuclear facilities on early Sunday morning. Iran launched Operation Herald of Victory, which targeted the main U.S. Air Force base in the region, which is located in Qatar, the Al Udeid base, which houses over 10,000 military personnel out of the 50,000 that are currently deployed across the region by the U.S., the different bases that it has across the region. There are reports of 4 to 6 missiles hitting its targets in this base, a base that is located over 30 kilometers southeast of any residential urban areas from the Qatari capital, from Doha, located 30 kilometers from Doha southeast. After all this has happened, the Hamas resistance movement has praised the attack, as well as the Secretary General of Hezbollah, who also praised the unity and courage that is being demonstrated by the Iranian nation and the leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, in the face of Israeli U.S. aggression against the country. In remarks that were published on Monday, the leader of the Lebanese resistance movement, Sheikh Naim Qassem, said the Islamic Republic is entitled to its right as it has been subjected to aggression, referring to the Israeli-U.S. attacks against the country since June 13th, and more recently, the U.S. direct bombing using B-2 stealth bombers against peaceful nuclear facilities in the Persian territory. Qassem said that Iran has a brave leader who is determined to make it honorable and powerful, adding that the Iranian people have put aside their differences to stand united in confronting Israeli and U.S. acts of aggressions. On June 13th as well, Israel launched, as we were informing, the unprovoked and indiscriminate aggressions in Iran, killing many high-ranking military commanders, nuclear scientists, and ordinary civilians. For his part, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, has condemned the attacks on Iran as unjustified aggression. Putin condemned the U.S. and Israeli aggression on Iran as unjustified and without any basis. It is part of the statements that were made during Putin's meeting with the foreign minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, who traveled on Monday to Moscow to meet with high-ranking authorities and with the president himself. Putin welcomed the visit of Araghchi, saying that the visit gave them the opportunity to discuss urgent matters and think together about ways to overcome the current situation, reaffirming Russia's official stance, saying Moscow had already voiced its condemnation statements by the Russian Foreign Ministry and the UN, at the UN Security Council. This emphasizing the depth of Russian-Iranian ties, describing the relationship as long-standing, strong, and built on mutual trust. Reaffirming also that Russia would do its part to help the Iranian people and seek a peaceful resolution to the current crisis. All this, as we have been reporting, comes after Iran warned the U.S. that the Islamic Republic's imminent retaliation against unlawful and unprovoked aggression on the country's nuclear site will carry unforeseeable consequences, knowing that time is not on Washington's side. The Hatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, which coordinates joint military operations by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and Army, issued a warning on Monday following the U.S. aggression on 3 peaceful nuclear facilities in the Persian territory, warning that the U.S. attacks will be followed by powerful and targeted operations, as we have seen moments ago with the launching of the Herald of Victory operation, as they fulfilled the pledge that was done to the Iranian people to answer to all and any aggression that is committed against the Iranian people. So we continue to update for anyone just tuning in. On our special broadcast, Iran launched the Herald of Victory operation, which targets U.S. military assets in the region. More specifically, right now it targeted the Al Udeid base in Qatar, one of the U.S. most important military asset in the region, which is the seat of the U.S. Air Force Command in the region, with from 4 to 6 missiles striking, hitting its objective. Now from Yemen we're getting now statements from the political bureau member of the Ansarullah movement, Mohammed al-Bukaiti, saying that they support the attacks on U.S. military base in the region, and they reaffirm the support for Iran or any Islamic country that is currently under U.S. aggression. Meanwhile, citizens across Iran and different parts of Iran continue to celebrate and show their support for the Iranian leadership following the legitimate response against the U.S. military base in Qatar al-Udeid. And festive gatherings are being seen across Tehran and also across different Iranian cities following a successful retaliatory attack against the U.S. military base in Qatar. All this is happening also back in the U.S. Currently, there is dividing opinions of what is happening right now, as a large part of the U.S. people, which we have also seen in demonstrations that have been held in the U.S., but also a large part, also not only Democrats but also Republicans, are also expressing their voice against the U.S. intervention in a new war in the Middle East. And more specifically right now, the leader in the House of Representatives, the Democrat leader, Hakeem Jeffries, provided statements saying that the Trump administration has not provided Congress any evidence that Iran represents an imminent threat and that justify any kind of attack. So we continue to report on the ongoing situation. Iran launched a retaliatory attack called Operation Hail of Truth, following the U.S. bombings with 2 B-2 stealth bombers of 3 peaceful nuclear facilities in Iran. Moments after that attack, Iran promised a corresponding response, as they announced that no aggression against the country will be an answer, and the U.S. will receive a direct and strong message with Iran's response to the unprovoked attack by the U.S. bombers on early Sunday morning. They report that the number of missiles that were used during this first phase of Operation Hail of Truth, the number of missiles was the same as of the bombs that were used by the U.S. military to attack the 3 peaceful nuclear facilities. We continue to report that Iranians are gathering across different areas in Iran. More images are appearing of Iranians taking massively to the streets to support the Iranian leadership and to support the actions carried out by the army in the defense of national sovereignty and in defense of the Iranian right to self-determination and independence. Iran's Revolutionary Guard spokesman Colonel Iman Tachik confirmed the targeting of the U.S. military bases in Qatar. Let's listen to the statements.
The U.S. terrorist base at Al Udeid in Qatar was targeted with a powerful and destructive missile attack. This base serves as the headquarters of the U.S. Air Force Command and is the largest strategic asset of the U.S. terrorist military in West Asia. The message behind this decisive action by the sons of the nation in the armed forces is clear and direct to the White House and its allies, the Islamic Republic of Iran. Relying on Almighty God and the faithful, proud people of Iran will, under no circumstances, leave any aggression against its territorial integrity, sovereignty, or national security unanswered. The U.S. bases and mobile military targets in the region are not points of strength but rather major points of weakness for this warmongering regime.
We keep bringing you all the latest informations that are coming from the Middle East at this hour, following the recent retaliatory actions carried out by Iran, by the Islamic Republic of Iran, against one of the many military bases that the United States has around Western Asia. Let's recall that earlier today, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran, IRGC, officially confirmed that it launched a retaliatory missile attack targeting the U.S. Al Udeid airbase in Qatar, which is, this was released by Iran's main news media outlets, and that was the breaking news a few moments ago. And we keep bringing you all the latest informations, all the aftermath that has come following these actions, these retaliatory actions that have been prized by many leaders worldwide as part of Iran's inalienable right to its self-defense. This follows the actions, the illegal actions perpetrated by the U.S. on Sunday, early Sunday morning, following its attacks on 3 nuclear power plants that were taking place on the early hours of Sunday morning. And it had been also reacted by many leaders worldwide and also many social movements worldwide, and had the repudiation of many countries, first of all of Cuba, that condemned this action that undermines the security of the entire region and also represented a clear violation of United Nations charters and all norms of the international security as well. Earlier today, Iran launched a retaliatory strike against U.S. military base in Qatar. This happened earlier today, like a couple of hours ago, and also this was confirmed by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, confirming this action, this brave action, according to the highest authorities of Iran at this moment. Also, the whole world is reacting to all the events that are happening, and also there is a high concern on how this could further escalate the tensions in the Middle East amid these confrontations, these direct confrontations that has been taking place ever since Israel launched a terrorist military action against the people of Iran on June 13th, over a week ago, and has been having a snowball complex scenario for the Middle East. It has been responded strongly by Iran, by the Iranian authorities through the Operation True Promise 3. There has been back and forth military reprisals from one side to the other. There have been military retaliation missiles as well from Iran towards Israel and towards the main cities of Israel. We're talking about Tel Aviv, Haifa, and also some cities of the Palestinian territories occupied by occupation forces of Israel, like Nablus in the West Bank. And these also have prompted an international community reaction as well. There have been several emergency meetings of the United Nations Security Council, and there have been also many statements regarding coming out from these encounters. There, with a single voice among all the leaders that have, and all the representatives, the diplomatic representatives that have been spoken in these spaces, that is the call for a diplomatic solution on this conflict. This must be the priority. However, there has been a great support for Iran on its retaliatory response on these aggressions. Iran has been a country that has been subjected to unilateral sanctions, to also the violation on several occasions of the national sovereignty. Let's recall that there have been, in the past couple of decades, there have been assassinations to the most important scientists, nuclear scientists of the country, also against political leaders. And in this context, in the context of the current confrontation between Iran and Israel, also the United States has been playing a key role in prompting the pouring oil in this conflict, with several calls to the assassination of the supreme leader of Iran, of the Islamic Republic of Iran. We are talking about Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, which is a symbolic leader and also a sacred leader for the people of Iran. And this has been a complete disrespect from the United States towards the people of Iran. And also it has been way before launching its direct connection, its direct link and involvement in this conflict. The United States has been one and the main allied of Israel, of the Zionist regime of Israel, led by Benjamin Netanyahu. In this context, the U.S. has been providing military aid, financing aid with this to support the madness of Benjamin Netanyahu, and who is dragging the United States into this conflict, in a conflict that now has the direct involvement of the United States, as it was informed on Saturday, early hours of Saturday morning, when the United States launched a military attack against nuclear targets in the territory in Iran. And this means that the United States now has a direct role, even when it has always been involved in this, and also has been involved in the genocide that Israel and the Zionist regime of Benjamin Netanyahu has been carrying out in the Palestinian enclave in the Gaza Strip for almost 2 years already. And the United States and its successive administrations have been supporting non-stop this genocide in the Palestinian enclave, and it is not surprise for the entire world how it is also now being involved directly in this conflict, in which Israel wasn't expecting the reaction and the retaliatory actions that Iran was going to be performing following this flagrant violation of its national sovereignty. That also, let's recall that first action that took place on June 13th impacted over 100 targets in that moment, that left over 70 people dead at that moment, and also had had over 300 people injured. And we are speaking about targets in residential buildings and in urban cities that had a high mortality rate of civilians, of innocent civilians that had nothing to do with the conflict, in a conflict that wasn't started by Iran. It was started and it was launched by Israel on its thirst of expansion, in a context in which it is completing a total ethnic cleansing, or is trying to achieve a total ethnic cleansing in the Palestinian state and in the Palestinian territory. And now we are seeing how it is also trying to expand its power through violent means, through violence, through blood, through aggressions, illegal aggressions against Iran. And it has also been meaning that all the region, the whole region and all the neighboring countries can be potentially dragged as well into this conflict. Now we are seeing how the consequences are spreading, and this follows the right intentions of Israel and also the United States on getting involved in this conflict in a direct manner, and how it has been carrying out also action that with the action performed on early hours of Sunday morning, with the attack on three of the main nuclear facilities of Iran. That actually was a few days earlier. It was, according to authorities, were evacuated as the authorities were thinking that this action of the United States could have happened as it actually happened. So this is a complex scenario for the region and also for the entire world, that is actually following very closely, very attentive to everything that is happening at this moment as it unfolds in this moment. And as teleSUR English is bringing you as well all the latest informations at this hour, and to go deep into the analysis of everything that is going on the Middle East at this hour, we invite to this special broadcast to Yvonne Tellez, an expert in these matters, a political analyst. Hi Yvonne, thank you very much for joining us at this hour.
Thank you very much for having me.
First of all, on your opinion, what would be the implication of this major escalation for the countries of the region?
Okay, what we're seeing is a very serious escalation indeed. I don't think, and I think what worries us the most is the fact that we are under the battlefield of countries with real military powers, but conducted and guided by not very, what will be the word, fit persons, and I'm talking about Mr. Donald Trump, Mr. Netanyahu in this case. So the response that we saw Iran that gave just hours ago regarding the U.S. attacks under its right of legitimate defense will definitely call for a response from the United States. And what could be worrying is how the United States is going to respond, even if under international law, what we know is that states that are under the threat of attack or are under a direct attack um, can use their response in a proportionate way as a legitimate use of the right to defend themselves. However, we can see this from the standpoint of the U.S. not as a legitimate response, but as a threat or as a direct attack. And under this view, there could be an escalation because there could, I mean, a very strict and hard response from the U.S. Can come, and this means even more destabilization of the region, of the countries involved. And let's take into account that there's another state that is coming into the spotlight, and that will be Qatar, in the sense that Qatar is the country that has been attacked, not because Iran is attacking Qatar directly, but because the military base of the US was in Qatar. So that means that Qatar will probably have a response to this action. So that means that we have some other countries, some other states enter into this, and this definitely derives us for a very unstabilized situation in the Middle East region.
Do you think that Donald Trump, US President Donald Trump, decided to prompt the US insertion, direct involvement in this conflict, even when he had this very erratic behavior where the people didn't know what was going to be next, its next step?
We know that, well, I take your words, his erratic behavior, that's what has characterized him since his first term. We've seen even more radical actions in this second term, in just this few months that he's in power. That is that what we know is that the attacks that we saw yesterday from the US did not respond to a direct agreement within the Congress of the United States. We know is that the Democrats were very hard on their opinions regarding the U.S. involvement in this conflict, first of all, and we also know that even Republicans within the Congress were very hard also on Donald Trump's actions. So I mean, with that in mind, we don't know if the United States, I mean, Donald Trump will retaliate Iran's actions, and if he does so, we don't know if he's going to ask the Congress for their agreement or their consensus regarding these actions. What I can expect and what we can expect is that probably Donald Trump is going to move by himself. He's not going to ask for any kind of permission or agreement within the Congress. Because we have seen that he has a condition of bypassing even his own domestic law. So what I'm afraid is that the U.S. may retaliate this Iran's actions. That's what I think has everyone under very, very complete tension, and it's a worrying thing because that could mean even a more drastic escalation of the conflict regarding also the military force that these powers have. Um, so, and we know that the U.S. can definitely endure within military conflict. It has the means, and it has the knowledge, and it has basically one of the most powerful military forces in the world. So I don't know if they're gonna back up. And just think, let's also consider that if Iran will accept in a hypothetical idea will accept to go back to the table of negotiations, that could mean, under the situation that we're facing, a surrender of Iran. And Iran has been deeply affected by this Israel and US conduct. So I don't think Iran is going to take that path, because it will not trust the actions of Israel or even the United States. So I don't think that this could we could follow, or at least envision, a very close, or in a short term, a probable diplomatic reinstallation of the negotiations.
So in your opinion, this is a conflict that has no end in sight for the moment, and I wanted to ask you, do you think that the world is on the verge of a conflict that could have global dimensions at this point in which we are at?
Yes, that's what I'm implying. I do not think that we can see yes, an oncoming solution in a short term. And why is that? Because we know, excuse me for that, we know that this Iran US tension and even Israel involvement uh, has been an ongoing conflict, and this goes back to the 20th century, and with what happened with the deployment of the Shah before the 1979 Iranian Revolution. I mean, what we're seeing, and where I'm implying, is that there is a political background for these tensions over here. And what we are seeing right now is the materialization of this political tension that goes far beyond, at least for 50 or even more years. So when we see that there is a materialization of this tension in the field, it is very difficult to go back to the installation or reinstallation of dialogue in it. And I don't think that the US is to reinstall negotiations. Ayatollah Khomeini, probably they will be expecting a probable deployment of the regime, Iranian regime. That's one of the hypotheses. And on the other, there will be an Iran that is not willing to trust its partners, by the US and Israel, basically the US in the negotiations, because of what has happened. So that is a fact that will have a direct in how those states go back to the negotiation table, if they are willing to do so, or if this military escalation doesn't end in something different. With that in mind, then what we can foresee is that of other actors in this scenario, the involvement of some other countries space mean very probable, not just regional but international conflict, if the powers get involved. And that's what we can foresee in a near future. If the escalations continue, we can see that probably Iran or Russia try to back up Iran. In this case, Russia, sorry, try to back up Iran if the escalation continues. So, an event is completely tangled with other. So, if we this escalation over here, then what we can see is that of some other new countries on this part, and that would lead to an even more conflicted, more difficult, and an even more broader conflict.
And in your opinion, what's the role that are playing in the great news media and powers of the West regarding the narrative that is being related to Iran at this moment?
Okay, media has a central role always in the construction of narratives for the normal people because this is the way that we are informed, and that is the biggest and the big ethical responsibility that media holds. We know that the media, in, I mean, the leading media comes from the West most of the time, or that the independent media or other lines of media is not as widespread as the traditional one. So what this could mean is that we are just building up and constructing and um, nurturing those narratives, those anti-Iranian narratives, and portraying Iran as a world enemy because of the how the construction of this idea of of a country that means like a very great risk for the rest of the world. Iran, and I am not going to, in this case, to discuss what Iran or hasn't done their nuclear capacity. What I'm going to focus is on the actions of Iran, and Iran has not been attacking any other country and has the military forces or has not displayed missiles around the world. It hasn't done so. So in this, the idea of a risky that poses a threat to the whole humanity just dissolves because those, and I'm talking about the US mainly and Israel, of course, who has these double standards and are talking about how they are trying to save the world from a terrible threat and underscore their own actions, and this is backed by the traditional media. So what this does is just build up and reinforce these narratives and these traditional narratives of trying to see Iran as the bad part, as the bad guy of the movie, and the Israelis trying to portray themselves as the victims. So I think the media has a very a direct role here, a central role in deconstructing and just showing the facts as they are, these actors, because none of them is free of probably some erroneous actions, but also that we can just condemn one action or other. We have to understand the whole context. What the media and the responsible media has to do is to allow places like this where we can be informed beyond what we personally think, but we can be technically and responsibly.
In the meantime, I mean, this war was started by Israel, was carrying out brutal genocide against the people of Palestine, and a genocide that has stopped ever since this new conflict started. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that this was a strategy of Israel to invisibilize the ongoing extermination of the Gaza population?
Yes, I think that a highly questioned country like Israel, a highly questioned as Netanyahu, facing serious imputations and serious international law and international criminal law charges before the International Criminal Court, just to say some of what we are seeing. And a highly questioned state as Israel that is facing not just an international condemnation for its actions within within Palestine and with the Palestinian people. and the fact also that Israel is even facing some backups from its own people regarding how the Israeli population, some of them, began to question and to start some protests around, in the Israeli territory, and also the international community and the international population that what we have seen around the world in probably these last 2 months regarding regarding the condemnation of Israel's actions. I think that supports the idea that what Israel decided to do was, in a way, to distract its own people and extract the international community from what's happening with this genocide, because that's what it is. It's a genocide with the Palestinian people. So definitely, yes, I think it's a factor that Israel used as a distractor for its own actions within the Palestinian territory.
One last question, Yvonne. I wanted to ask you, what are the main solidarity expressions that are coming from Latin America, from Africa, from other continents of the world towards Iran?
Well, yesterday in the Security Council urgent meeting that was called, we saw the condemnation of the U.S. attacks on Iran, because it's a grave breach of international law. Also, the fact that the U.S. attacked nuclear or uranium facilities within the Iranian territory. That's also prohibited under international law. So we saw that there was an international condemnation, and what has been seen from the rest of the international community is, of course, a condemnation of the acts, because even though there can be some tensions and some actions that call for special measures regarding the conflicts that those countries are facing, that doesn't mean, and nothing justifies the use of force. So what rests in the international community is a radical condemnation of those acts, because we are supposed to have evolved in the sense to understand that conflicts should be avoided, and I'm talking about military conflicts should be avoided, and instead opt for the peaceful settlement of disputes. And this just goes far beyond from this obligation that the states have. So what we're seeing is, in general, not all countries, but in general, what we're seeing is this international condemnation, and I think that has to be, that has to persevere. The fact that those actions cannot be not understood, not justified under any condition.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, for your time here with us to help us go deep into this matter that is of great concern for the entire humanity at this moment.
It is. Thank you very much for the invitation.
We were speaking to Yvonne Tellez, who is an international law expert in the context of the retaliatory actions performed earlier today by Iran following the launch of strikes against U.S. military base in Qatar. This was a response of the direct involvement of the U.S. in the conflict that has further escalated in historical dimensions of the tensions in the Middle East. Stay tuned with teleSUR English for all the latest information on this matter.